Well, in this time of anxiety and division, very tense time for our country and for our church, I want to begin with something very simple today. And that is that all of you, brothers and sisters, all of you are God's. You are God's children. All of you belong to God, and God belongs to all of you. And everything that we see and taste and touch, the trees outside and the rain and the sky and the clouds, all that belongs to God. Darkness and light, night and day, the grass, the water on the grass, the pollen in the water, all belongs to God. And even if we take our biggest telescope and launch it out into space and we point its eye back to the beginning of time, and we look 13.8 billion light years through space past 170 billion galaxies. Everything we still see belongs to God. And the joy and the happiness of things is in that belonging. And the special joy for us as human beings is we get to know that and claim that belonging and lift all that we experience in creation up to God. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, we do have this election coming up, and a lot of people are saying, you have to belong to this, or you have to belong to that, and this is where your allegiance lies, or that's where your allegiance has to be. But as Christians, we have a transcendent belonging and allegiance to something that is infinitely deeper and stronger and more powerful than any earthly allegiance could ever be. And as I wrote in my article for the newsletter for November, it's not only a belonging to God, but we have a mission in God. We have a purpose that transcends everything. Like all the world can change. And our mission remains the same, which is to show God's love in the context in which we find ourselves. And to be that love with the people we find ourselves. And today, Feast of All Saints, we find a marvelous support, not only for this belonging and identity, but in this community. And not merely a community of people here, all these lovely parishioners that I see and visitors who are here, but the communion of saints. These people who have had their lives broken open and made radiant with God. And they're here around us to sing us into God's joy and into God's life. Myriads upon myriads, thousands upon thousands, from all tribes and families and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, robed in white with palm branches in their hands. They are they who have come out of the great ordeal. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. We have around us this great community of saints to sing us into God's joy. We have John of the Cross, who I call by his birth name, Juan de la Yepes. And John was an ecstatic poet. He's considered one of the best poets in the entire Spanish tradition. And he was an ecstatic friar, a Carmelite friar. And what happened to him is he got imprisoned by his fellow friars. They put him in prison because he would not go along with the political agenda of his order, the Carmelites. And in the darkness of that prison, where he was sometimes beaten, he wrote his ecstatic poetry about divine union. Oh, dark night, fired with love's urgent longings, ah, the sheer grace, I went out unseen, my house being now all still. And I think of that poem after the kids go to bed at night. I think, ah, my house being now all still. I can finally think again. stillness. There's Augustine of Hippo. We all know Augustine, the Confessions, and his supposedly racy life and his journey into Christianity and being a priest and then a bishop. And Augustine's journey was that the further he got into God and the further he penetrated into prayer, the more mysterious and strange he became to himself. And the more mysterious and strange God became to him. And as the Vandals were sacking their way through North Africa, sending thousands of refugees to Hippo, his city where he was bishop, overwhelming Hippo, and then besieging Hippo, that's when Augustine died. He still referred to God as, "O beauty so ancient and so new." And one of my favorite saints, I'll stop this catalog in a little bit, but these guys are great and these women are great. I have to share them. Is St. Philip Neri. In the time of the most corrupt time of the Roman Church, 16th century Rome, called the second apostle of Rome. He was known for his laughter and for his jokes and for his humor and for his singing. And they say a ball of fire came down and came into his heart, and his heart became enlarged, and it was so hot that he had to get permission to unbutton the top buttons on his cassock because he couldn't bear to have his cassock buttoned up. St. Philip Neri. And there's Julian, apostle of love and tenderness in a time of crisis. John Ruysbroeck, who's like a private saint of mine who wrote mystical poetry under a tree outside Flanders. And Francis Xavier, carrying the light and the fire of Christ to India. All these great women and men. All these great women and men. Lives broken open, made radiant with God, showing us a different way. And as Christians, I suppose you can get to God without the saints. God's grace can do anything, but why would we squander this resource? This amazing resource. In my own story, as I've told you many times, I had a conversion experience in college, and I felt that I had to give my life entirely to God. And I went to my Lutheran pastor and I said, I want to give my life entirely to God. And my Lutheran pastor said, well, you could come to church on Sunday. And I was like, no, my whole life, it has to be God's. He didn't understand. But I went to the library, the Madison Public Library, Madison, Wisconsin, and got the 2-volume hagiography. So writings about the saints' lives. And I read about them. And what happens when you read about the saints and you tune into these people is your imagination is open to new possibilities for yourself. That's their purpose around us. They inspire us to new possibilities for living in our lives exactly wherever we are now. So if I tell you, I want you to go out and love people, you're kind of like, oh yeah, whatever. I'll try to love people again. But if we read together the story of Teresa of Calcutta, taking care of the leprous, dying on the streets of Calcutta, giving them dignity in their last days of life, then when you're walking down Churton Street, your heart is changed and you start caring for people in a new way. You might reach out just a little bit more. That's what the saints do. They get into your heart and into your imagination and into your feeling and your thinking in your life, and they change how you live. All these great saints. Now, the Beatitudes, of which there are 9 in Matthew, are the map into holiness. They all follow. And you know, the word blessed is makarios in Greek. It means something like happy. It means happy. No kidding. Like sainthood is happy sainthood. It means blessed and happy and holy all together in one. Makarios. Blessed, happy, holy are you. And if I say to you, well, the Beatitudes are this map into sanctity, into this happy, holy blessedness, I imagine your eyes might just gloss over a little bit, right? Because it's like, oh, the Beatitudes. How do I possibly live the Beatitudes? mourning and hunger and grieving and mercy. But I've got something particularly special for you. This is something that came out in my prayers this year. I realized that in Matthew's 9 Beatitudes, you can break them down, and it gets really cool. So just stay with me with this. 3 Beatitudes, the exact 3 that Luke uses: poverty in spirit, hunger and thirst for righteousness, and grieving. Those things are holy and blessed because those are things that deliver you to the feet of Jesus. Those are things that get you to Jesus. And in this world where we are so distracted by so many things, what else is going to get us to Jesus to try to learn a new way of life, to say, teach me something new. Show me how to be a human being and to love where I am. How do we get that kind of docility and piety before Jesus except through being broken open by poverty of spirit, and hunger and thirst, wanting so much, desperate need for an answer, for righteousness, for something, and grief. All the loss we go through day by day, my friends, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller. These things are blessed because they deliver us to Jesus. There's 4 Beatitudes that describe what happens when you start learning from Jesus. There's meekness. They inherit the earth. I'm not sure I want to inherit the earth, but meekness, which means learning, like becoming learners again. Like we think of ourselves as masters. We have basically figured life out, but we haven't. Show me how to live a new life now. Meekness, purity of heart that comes from having our hearts focused on the mission to love. No matter what happens in our world, we have this mission to show love, and that's what keeps us whole. That's what keeps us solid and grounded and true. Meekness, purity, blessed are you. Mercy. And mercy is not just saying, oh, yeah, whatever, that person sinned. Mercy is loving kindness. It's active. It reaches out to heal. And the merciful will have mercy shown to them. Do you want to be healed? Do you want to have more health in your life? Then work for the healing of others and the health of their lives. And the peacemakers, not merely the Anglican compromisers forever, but people who go in and not merely to negotiate, but get to know the hurt at the heart of the division and address that and let that kind of come out so there can be healing. Blessed are the peacemakers. So 3 Beatitudes get us to Jesus. 4 Beatitudes show us what life is like in Jesus. And the other 2 are what the world does in response to the life of Jesus. A little bit of reviling, a little bit of persecution. Blessed are you. Hard to receive that. But that's because when we belong to the Lord, like I've said, our allegiance is to a different kingdom. And everybody who's not belonging to that kingdom is finding different ways of allegiance and anxious to make sure everybody belongs to their little allegiance. Like, are you a Tar Heel? Are you a Wahoo? Are you a Duke person? We all have these little allegiances. And if you don't belong to any of them, you're kind of scary and you're wrong and you're different. That's why Christians get persecuted day by day, because we're different and we follow a different Lord. So blessed are you, St. Matthew's, in your poverty, in your hunger, dying hunger that we all have in your grief. We've had 2 funerals this week, a lot of grief here at church. Blessed, happy, Makarioi are you in meekness and purity and mercy and peacemaking. Blessed are you if you're reviled or persecuted. All of us belong to God already. You can't escape it. You want to belong to somebody else? It's too bad. You belong to God, and God has you totally. We all belong to God, and the saints are ones who've just opened their lives to that belonging. And they're here all around us, singing us into God's joy and God's light. Blessed are these saints. Blessed are you. Amen.